Welcome, y'all. Thanks for coming. Let me see, is my screen? Yep, there we go. Okay. This is our best practices for apps talk. We're going to go through a bunch of UI UX stuff just around apps and interactions. I'm Anthony, as you might know, developer relations here at Discord, and you may also know Maisy.
Hello, hello. I'm Maisy. Been with Discord a couple years now, but before that, I was in the bot developer community. So you may or may not know me from either of those.
Cool, yeah. I know you from Discord, but if I had been a bot developer, I would know you from that time too. Um, cool. Okay, so best practices. What are we talking about today? We're going to cover a bunch of stuff. The main things are we're going to talk about some common patterns when you're building your apps. We're going to talk about some things that we think are underutilized, some cool features that already exist in the API that we think people could take advantage of and build some really cool stuff with. We're going to get into some anti-patterns, some things that we see that we have opinions and thoughts on about how to make them better or break them down. Just things that we think make it tougher for users to use your apps. We're also going to have a Q&A at the end. And we're going to talk in general just about best practices uh, around building and designing apps, but you can kind of take some of these ideas into really anything you're building and designing. The Q&A at the end, I think I mentioned before, we did some like pre surveys ahead of time and got some feedback from y'all and some questions that we'll address at the end. We're also going to take any questions in chat, and at the end, we'll try to address as many as we can. Cool. So let's start with resources. These are a couple good ones that we have found that just in general cover a lot of space. So the Apple Human Interface Guidelines and the Google Material Design, specifically the foundations, which touch on a lot of just like things to think about as you're designing and building things. Some of the stuff in them doesn't fully apply because it's talking about, specific UI and UX or like, actual JavaScript and other things. But when it comes to building apps, you're working with components and messages. But the general like fundamentals are there, and these are just two really really great resources for you. Let's dive into some common patterns. Maisie's going to take this part over.
Yeah. So a bunch of common patterns that we found here, things that common features, all that kind of stuff, and ways that we think are good ways to go about doing them. So first here we've got temporary voice channel bots. These are it's a pretty common feature among bots. We've seen a bunch of these out there. A very common way of doing it is to have this create a voice channel at the top of the list. And then when users click on it, it will create their temporary voice channel and move them into it. We think this is a great example of using the existing patterns and experiences that users of Discord are used to, and then modifying them to make it fit what your bot does and to be a good experience for the users. So in this case, users, when they want to join a voice channel, they're used to looking at the channel list, clicking on that channel. And so by reusing that interaction, it gives users this intuitive sense of how to use your application in the best way possible. One thing, too, is these often have controls that allow the user to change settings and all that kind of stuff about their voice channel. Who can join, how many people can join, whether it's, publicly available or if it's a private voice channel. Quite often, we'll see those controls be in some sort of like text channel at the top of the category. We would recommend that you do it in the texting voice inside of this temporary voice channel, just because of the context of having those components in the text and voice channel. It makes it a lot clearer to the user where to find them, as well as the fact that those buttons are going to be controlling the voice channel that they're in. it's it's best to keep actions like that as close to the context of where those actions are taking place as possible. Yeah. Next slide.
All right.
Another very common thing that happens is deciding when to disable or remove a component on a message sent by your bot. Um, there's a lot to think about when it comes to this. One of the best ways that I've found to think about this is if the component is going to potentially become useful again in the future, you're going to want to just disable it rather than removing it from the message. Um, so in the example here, where we have this little demo bot, there's this next presenter button, which on the first part is not useful because there's no next presenter to move to. But then it becomes useful again in the second part because there's now an next presenter to move to. And finally, at the end there, it becomes disabled again because we're at the last presenter. And this is a very good way of communicating to users that this action is going to become useful again in the future and letting them know what actions are available, even if they can't necessarily take that action right now. It helps your users to kind of build this mental model of how everything works and have a better understanding of what they're doing when they're using your app. It's also nice too when you disable components versus removing them. It prevents what's called layout shift, which especially in an app like Discord, where a lot of these components are ending up inside of messages, inside of a chat that could potentially be moving very quickly. Keeping the layout of the message as consistent as possible is a very useful thing for users. They don't have to keep looking around to find what they're looking for, and it keeps them or keeps them from accidentally misclicking. For instance, if they're about to click a button and the whole message changes layout, they might miss the button. They might click a different button that does something they don't want to do. All kinds of stuff that when it comes to that. Um, but there's times where you might want to remove components and that it's a good idea to remove components, especially if it no longer becomes useful at all. So for instance, if this demo bot had a button to end the presentations entirely, once that's clicked, it's a good idea to remove all these actions because they're no longer going to be useful and you don't want them taking up space on the message and all that. Next slide. This is an example that we found in the community that we think handles disabling versus removing components really well. In this GIF here, you can see that this is a RPG style battle system. And in the case here where the user has all these attack actions available to them, they can click the button and then it becomes disabled while the attack plays out and the user can see the result of their action. And by disabling these instead of removing them, it allows a couple different things. One, it allows the user to look at and see the full list and think about their action ahead of time. Two, it also makes sure the message isn't shifting around. So it makes it a lot easier for the user to be reading all this text, telling them what's happening during the fight. And then right at the end of the battle here, you see that they remove all those actions, swap it out entirely for a new layout because the battle is over. This is a very good good example of kind of mixing and matching when to disable and when to remove buttons. Next slide. Up next
Oh,
here, button styling and color. This one, there's a bunch of different things to think about when deciding what style to use for a button. We got a couple different examples here. There's also the green button style that we have available for bot components or message components. And generally, you want to use fewer colors when it comes to these. There's a thing called semantic colors or semantic button colors. That's a good search term that you can use if you want to find more info about this. But kind of the TLDR of it is that There is the blue button, which is your primary button. That's what you want to use for the most common action that somebody might want to take. You want to only use that once. If you have multiple of them, it can be kind of confusing to users to see like, okay, we've got one action they want me to take here, but another action they also want me to take, and like maybe there's a third action they also want me to take. Um, so you want to keep it to one primary button per message, and then use a bunch of secondary buttons for any alternate actions that are kind of the less common things that people might still want to do, but isn't kind of the main thing that people are going to be looking for when they see your interface. This red button is what's called I believe we also call it a danger in our documentation. It communicates to the user that the action they're about to take is in some way dangerous or destructive or something that can't necessarily be undone or undone very easily. Now, this sounds scary, but it actually makes users more comfortable using your application. By using this button style to communicate to users that the action they're about to take is potentially dangerous, it gives them the peace of mind that they understand what it is they're about to do and understand whether or not they actually want to do it. If you just have a bunch of secondary buttons and they're doing, things like deleting stuff permanently, and it's just a gray button, users are going to be a little nervous using your app because they're going to be seeing all these gray buttons and they're not going to know which ones necessarily are going to do things that are going to be difficult for them to undo if they didn't actually want to do it. Um, and then this link button here. Um, Obviously, this is something that you kind of don't get a ton of control over, but just having this link button with the little icon there communicates to the user that this is going to be something that's going to take them outside of Discord versus keeping them in the app. Next slide. And I think Anthony is going to take over here.
Yeah, so I want to talk a little bit about app emoji. So every app that you create or bought gets access to 2,000 emoji that you can use kind of for anything within that app or bot. So there's so many things you can do with them. You can use them to sort of convey like styling. So you can see, for instance, on the left side here, I believe the game here is First Age, so same as the one we showed previously. Um, First Age Origin, or is it First Age RPG? I think First Age RPG. Uh, they use a ton of emoji to communicate a lot of different things here. They use it for attacks and different like skills and abilities. They also use it to give you like a consistent style of your buttons. So kind of leading back into what Maisie was talking about with buttons, there's an emoji button that lets you have an emoji as part of it. The really nice thing here is it kind of gives you this consistent style throughout your app. And so, like, let's say your skills and items show up in multiple places because they have that emoji as part of the button. It just makes it easy to like know that when you're going to click it, that's kind of you're going to get that same same pop up or same message from both of those, no matter where they're at. It also just makes it a lot quicker and easier to, as you're like looking at a UI, to click on the things that make sense to you, especially as you start like remembering what icon is used for each of those things. Another cool thing you can use them for are like health bars, experience bars. Um, they're you can sort of like upload different emoji that slowly fill up and use each of those as pieces. You can have it span multiple emoji. But yeah, it's a great way to just sort of communicate a lot of different things, visual style, give your app some like life. Uh, Another cool thing you can do. So if you remember a couple of months ago, Deviate did a talk where he ran through and sort of built a Pokedex. The way the way that Discord like shows emoji, they actually sort of are pixel perfect, and so you can see on the left side of the Pokédex message there that those aren't actually images; those are a 2x2 grid of emoji. They're just like packed really nice and tight, and so you can do some like really fun stuff with it. That's kind of like a little fun hack, but you can also use that um, the same idea for a health bar. So let's say you want to have your health bar, your like experience bar at the bottom of your message and spanning the whole thing. You can use a bunch of emoji to do that, and they'll be packed up nicely. Cool. Let's talk about context-dependent actions and components. So sometimes your app might have very like if, let's say you have a specific message. uh, it's sometimes really nice to show things only when they're needed. So a great example here with Colossal Card Maw, it's a app that lets you sort of look up, Magic the Gathering cards, just get more information about them. Some cards, if you're familiar with the game, have like very specific niche abilities. On the right side, there's a card that is actually dual-sided, so the back isn't just like the classic, back of a card. It's actually another card itself. And so when you're looking at that card through Colossal Card Maw, it gives you the option to flip that card around, and you can see the other side. On the left side here, what was the I forget what we were pointing out specifically here. Oh, I guess
The
so.
difference here being the flip button mainly.
Oh, I see. Okay. Also, I mean, you might notice that legalities isn't there. So the card that set is from is actually not legal in most formats, I believe. So the button is left off, I think, intentionally to show that. Well, I guess this is one of those cases where, like, if you could show it and just show that it's not legal anywhere, or but yes, so there's times where you're going to be showing context dependent things, and it's really helpful to like not muddy your UI. So if you have things that you think could be context dependent, think about like different ways to expose that. A good example might be if you're taking, you know, if you have like a slash command that works on someone's message, and um, that message may or may not have like a date time. So like let's say you're building an event or something, and you right click on a message and run a command on it. If it has like a date in there, you could expose like an ephemeral message after that allows you to convert that into either an event in Discord or gives you like a GCal invite or something from there. That also leads into Easter eggs. So we want to surprise and delight people. Um, it's nice to put little fun things in your apps and the games that you're building. Here's another example from Colossal Card Maw. So the card on the left, you actually roll dice as part of the one of the actions, um, and so there's actually a roll d6 button here for you to use that'll actually roll a d6 for you and give you like a random outcome. Same on the right side, there's a kind of another joke set that has this card that one of its actions will send you to a website, or you have to go to a website to like when you use it, you go to the website, you get the action from a random list. It'll just like generate one for you, and that's the action you take in game. So kind of fun. Uh, Here, there's an action specifically set up for it so that when you click it, it'll take that same random list and generate it for you. So actually super useful as a resource, but also kind of fun as you're like just browsing through cards to see some of these things. And that's going to lead into some of our underutilized features. Maisy's going to take back over for this.
So up next, here's kind of some things that we feel like are underutilized, or things that are utilized but might not be utilized in ways or to their fullest capacity necessarily. So up first here is a skilled scheduled event. This is existing primitive inside of Discord. You actually likely interacted with one of these if you marked yourself interested for the UI best practices event here. Um, this is something that is available to bots. Bots can create these, delete these, edit these, view a whole bunch of information about them. Um, and there's a lot of cool things that you can do when you start to use these existing platform primitives. in order to create the features of your app. So in the case of this example that we have right here, this is kind of a fake giveaway bot that uses guild scheduled events as its UI. So when it creates when a user creates a giveaway, it creates a scheduled event in the guild, and by doing this, it kind of gives you a lot of stuff essentially for free, where it shows this nice UI right at the top of the channel list that includes that giveaway. It tells users when the giveaway is ending, gives them a whole bunch of information about how many winners, the description, all that kind of stuff. Um, and by using the scheduled event here, you get a couple of other really neat things like this interested button. Now, this giveaway bot in particular uses the list of people that have marked themselves as interested in the event as the entry list for the giveaway. And so by having this list, it allows users to very quickly see whether or not they've marked themselves as interested and therefore entered the giveaway, um, as well as kind of give you a quick, view of how many people are entered in the giveaway and all that kind of stuff. And lastly, and this is kind of a huge one, is this share button. Scheduled events have this native sharing feature that allows you to create a link to the scheduled event, paste it anywhere pretty much in Discord, and you get this really nice embed that shows all the info, includes the interested button. And you just get all of this without any extra work just by using the guild scheduled events feature in order to do this. Next slide. Up next, autocomplete. Slash commands have these autocomplete options or string options that can be marked as quote unquote autocomplete options. And what this does is that when the user starts typing to fill in this option on their client, it sends a request to your bot with the text that they've typed, and your bot can respond with a list of quote unquote autocompletes of it. And there's a whole lot you can do with this. The most common ways we see it used is obviously for like literal autocomplete or for search. In the case of the example screenshot here, this is doing a fuzzy search on card names. And what this allows you to do, or what benefit this provides to the user is that if they make a typo as they're trying to find a card, or if they don't quite know the name of a card, it's very easy for them to just kind of type and try to find what they're looking for that way. But there's a lot of other things that you can do with autocomplete. There isn't really any restrictions as to how you respond to this autocomplete. So there's a lot of neat things you can do, like accepting multiple different formats for the entry. So in the case of this card thing here, it might accept a card name, or it might accept, for instance, a card number or ID or something like that. Or in the case of like, if you have an app for like collaboratively building a playlist with your friends, you might have a slash command that takes in a song, and you might have a couple different formats you might accept for that. You might kind of have your preferred format of just having people type in the song name that they're looking for. Or you might offer the option that if somebody pastes a Spotify link or a YouTube link or an Apple Music link or something into that field, you can use the autocomplete to return the list as just like a single item that is the name of the song for the link they posted. And what this does is this communicates to the user that like, hey, I understand this format. You're good. I know what you've given me, and I know how to handle it. And what you can do with this too is you can kind of communicate even more to the user that way by responding and having that item be named like the name of the song and then in parentheses the link. And what this does is this communicates to the user that like, I understand the format, but also like, hey, here's our preferred format for how we think is, the easiest way to do this. And there's, just all kinds of things you can do with autocomplete. Lots of great ways to provide your users flexibility in entering all that info into your bot. Next slide. Ephemeral messages. These definitely get used a lot. And what we think is kind of underutilized about ephemeral messages, or something we want to kind of point out here, is that Um, you can use ephemeral messages as a way of doing what's called progressive disclosure. And what progressive disclosure is in design is that you provide users with the minimum amount of information that is like necessary at first. And then as they start taking actions, you start showing them more information and providing them more options for more actions that they can take. Um, and what this does is it prevents users from getting overwhelmed. And for instance, too, you can uh, in the case of CardMaw here, it uses ephemeral messages as a way of also providing all of these actions that are things that users might want to take. But though most of those actions only show up on the ephemeral message. As you might have seen in the text chat earlier, Anthony showed one of these cards in chat. And in the message that's posted to the public channel, there's only two buttons. There's one that is like a super common action that people might want to do, which is viewing the card art full size. And the other is a button that says see more card actions. And when you click that, it sends you your own copy of this ephemeral message. And so what that does is it allows you to share the info out without having to worry about spamming the channel with, 4 layers of buttons and all that kind of stuff. Um, and another thing too is that you can use this use ephemeral messages with this kind of like show in chat or share publicly, et cetera, um, to do or to give your users kind of peace of mind that they're not going to accidentally spam a chat. So if you kind of establish in your bot that a very common pattern is that the first response to any slash command is going to be ephemeral, this kind of gives users this peace of mind that like, hey, if I run this command, I'm not going to accidentally spam my friends with 4 paragraphs of text about this thing that I wanted to look up using a search engine bot or something. um, and you can kind of communicate to users too when something's going to respond ephemerally or not ephemerally using conventions in your name. So you might have a command called like search, or you might have a command called like share search. And so search would, respond ephemerally, but share search might, allow people or might communicate to the user like, hey, this command I'm going to run is going to just post it publicly right away. So that kind of gives that user that confidence of like, okay, I'm doing something I don't necessarily want to share right away. I'm going to use this one, or I'm doing something I do want to share right away. I'm going to use this other one. Um, it's all about kind of giving users this intuitive understanding of what action they're about to take and what result it's going to have. And that's going to give them the confidence to keep using your app and to feel very comfortable using your app, especially in shared spaces like a Discord server. Up next, I think, yeah, up next is anti-patterns, and Anthony's going to take over here again.
Yeah, okay. Before I reveal the next slide, I'm so sorry for any of the bot devs that do this, but we're going to talk about kitchen sink bots. Okay, so what's a kitchen sink bot? It's a bot that it does everything, right? Like it's a giant utility bot. It has a ton of different actions that you can do. I think bots like this are cool if you're building it specifically for yourself, right? On your server, it's going to do a bunch of actions that only you need, and like maybe you don't want to be using like piecemeal 3 or 4 different other bots. You just want one in your server that does what you want, which is cool. But when you start having other people use it, uh, you you end up creating kind of a lot of noise for them, right? Like maybe they install it for like one specific purpose, but then they go to use the slash command and they see like 60 commands in there, right? And so you're just kind of like creating a lot of noise for them that they might not either need or even understand what it does when they came, to use your bot for like a specific purpose. So just generally, like the way I like to think about designing things is I wanted to solve a problem, right? Like I wanted to do something and I wanted to do that really well. And so all of the actions that thing can do, or this in this case a bot can do, should support that in some way. Um, it's I think totally fine if it's you're building like a calendar bot that has a bunch of different actions that may not all serve like one direct purpose, but are related to creating events and calendars and stuff. But in general, just like thinking about like what is the core purpose of the thing that I'm building, and are all of the pieces sort of aligning with that. So our general advice here is to like break up giant bots, break up things that do too many things, break them down into pieces, have very specific bots that are understandable and easy to use. Which also leads into this next part, which is kind of this permission hell, right? If you're building a bot and you allow it to use every permission, it's just going to be a lot to read and understand, right? Like as a user, if I see this, I'm not installing it. Like period. It's too scary, especially if it requires like any admin privileges. I'd just be like, I don't understand the full scope of what this thing can do. I would be terrified to install it and use it because it's, you know, it might do things on my server or as me that I just really don't expect or want it to do. So be very specific about what permissions you are giving your bot. Only give it the ones that it needs, and it kind of that's just a general advice there. Is like give it the permissions that it needs. And now we're going to talk a little bit about best practices. So we talked a little bit about the things that we would like to avoid, and here we want to dive into the opposite end of that. So intuitive naming is a great one. So name your bot something that is easy to understand. Name it something that when a user sees it, they instantly are like, oh, okay, I understand what this is going to do or it might solve this problem for me. But not only that, but give it a good description. It helps discoverability, but also name the actions that it can do, its commands well, so that like when a user is typing a slash command, they understand what action they're trying to take, and through the context of the name of the bot and the actions it has, they'll be able to quickly understand, intuitively what it is that is going to do. It also really helps the discoverability of your commands itself, right? Like if they install it for a very specific purpose and they're digging through the commands that the bot can do, they might find something new that makes it very easy. If it's named right, it makes it very easy for them to just understand what it should do, use it, and then be able to use more of your functionality. Accessibility is a huge one. So I like to think about this when I'm building, literally anything. There's a lot of different ways you can think about accessibility. Some big ones, color blindness. Keep color blindness in your thoughts, especially if you're like adding a bunch of emoji or you want to be using color to describe specific things, even around buttons. There's a lot of good resources that you can upload screenshots of whatever you're building, whether it's an app or a game, or you can upload screenshots and it'll show you what different types of color blindness see the colors as. You want to build stuff that is just like visually easily readable, uh, and then also for people that are visually impaired, we have like screen readers, right? So a lot of our components have alt text that you can use. Um, and you should use it. So, if you have an image, put alt text that sort of describes what that image is of. You have people using screen readers that are using, your apps that want to be able to understand what they do. And the more accessible you make the things that you build, the more people are able to use them. There's a ton more about accessibility. Actually, those resources we posted before, the Apple Human Interface Guidelines, Material Design, and so many more around accessibility are just great reads. Um, yeah, error handling. So error handling, there's so many ways that like you can handle errors nicely. The worst that you can do is if you have an error, don't surface anything, command just fails, user's confused about what happened, right? Like as a user, I'm trying to use something, it breaks, I don't understand why. I might not be technical enough to be able to like figure out what's going on. So it's really nice to as a start, tell users what happened, right? It broke in some way, show them, why, and then as a next step, even better is if you can explain to them how to fix it, right? Like let's say an API is down and you're trying to hit some API, right? You can say your bot's perfect errors don't exist. I guess write bots like enterprise first, and then you don't have to worry about error handling. But yeah, let's say an API is down. Uh, a user is trying to like use a command that hits some endpoint that collects, maybe bus routes or something in your city, and gives them the time of the next bus, and that is just down. Uh, the best you can like you can just tell them, hey, like there's an error fetching the API, try again later, right? Um, you could even describe it better and say like, hey, like we attempted to fetch your bus route. Uh, it seems like there's an error currently with like the API that we're trying to use. Wait again later, try this again, in an hour or tomorrow. Unfortunately, it's not working now, which sucks for if you're trying to like catch a bus. But maybe even send them a link to another resource, right? Like send them to Google Maps or somewhere that has those bus routes available to them. Um, yeah, so basically just don't tell the user what's wrong, or even, don't just like say that there was an error. Tell them what's wrong, show them how to fix it if they can. Also, if you're accepting input too. So let's say you're taking text as input, you're parsing it as a date. This also lines up with accessibility, thinking about how different countries display dates. There's the US does it differently than everybody else, but let's say you're expecting it in a European fashion. You're doing day, month, year. They're inputting something that's month, day, month, year, month, day, year, and it's just not parsing correctly because they're inputting a day that is like the 31st, and the month that doesn't count as a month, right? um, so you could say have an error that says, hey, like we weren't able to parse this. Make sure, like, here's the exact format. Make sure you're giving it to us in this format. Make sure that you understand that, like, it is day, month, year as you're putting it in, and it's two numbers for the month and the day, and four numbers for the year. So explain the errors if you can. Another great thing, getting feedback. So it's it can be tough to do, right? Like, you want people using the things you build, uh, but the best thing you can do is to get feedback on the things you're building. Also, to just use them yourself, right? Like, build it, use it, see if there's issues. But the second you start giving it to other people, there's so many things that you'll get feedback on that you never even thought of because people use what you build in different ways. I think one of the most humbling experiences you can have is actually watching somebody use the things you build, because it's crazy how even like the most technical person trying to use something that you built without any context will run into like the craziest bugs, or they'll have um, different use cases, or they'll use it in some way that you don't expect, right? And this might even lead to one, bug fixes, but also new features, right? So if you find a way that people are using the app that you built, and they're trying to piece together three different commands to do some specific integration, maybe it makes sense to turn that into one command. Yeah, so getting feedback, start with your friends, right? Like, just give it to the people that you might think use or play what you're building. Get some feedback. As you start getting a user base around what you're building, have a Discord server for it, right? Or some place to collect feedback. A Google form is great. Getting anonymous feedback or getting people playtesting and using the thing that you're building in a public space is great. Allows you to like keep up with them and talk to them, and just there's just like so many great things about interacting with the people that are using what you're building that can lead to making a better app.
I'm also going to hop in here real quick with a last thing about something called UXR, or user research, or user experience research. And this is something that we've done at Discord for features that we're working on. And what this is taking what you built, getting it to users, and asking them to do something, but not telling them anything about how to use it, or any of that kind of stuff. And that can give you a lot of really good info about where you might have issues with onboarding, or other usability concerns, like if somebody can't find something. Or a while ago, you all may have used the app launcher on mobile. That's the little button next to the chat input that allows you to see all your installed apps and stuff, and then run commands through there. We were doing some UXR testing on that, and I was sitting in on one of these sessions, and one of the craziest things for me was like watching this user and they couldn't find a button to do something. And I'm sitting here like, I didn't even like realize that like this is because it's not something that you think about as a developer as somebody who knows the intended way to do something. Um, and you may not realize right away that this is something that like might be hard for somebody to find because it's in a weird spot or a weird color or like the text says something that's not super clear. um, it's a great way to get that kind of feedback that you just can't get by working on it or by looking at it yourself or by walking somebody through it.
Yeah, the like zero context feedback is like it is very humbling. Be prepared. Just be prepared to like take feedback and write a lot of notes. Uh, and then also speaking of writing, so documenting your app. This is a really big one. Um, from a discoverability standpoint, having a really good description, both about what the bot does in general and what actions it can take are great. If it's a more complex bot itself, like let's say you're building something that is meant to be moderating huge servers, you're probably going to want to have like an actual website with documentation around it, whether it's like a wiki or you're building like a custom website of some sort, or even like if you're thinking about like you've got something open source and you've got a GitHub repo, having a good README, right? Like you want people to come in with zero context and be able to understand what it is that they're going to be using, and then understand how they're using it. Tutorials are great, how to's. There's just so many different ways that you can think about writing documentation, but just at the end of the day, make it easy for people to understand what they're using and how they're using it. Cool. That's the main talk. We have a bunch of questions I saw come through, and we also have questions that y'all submitted before the talk. Uh, so we're going to dive into some of these. We'll start with a few that we got from before, and then we'll check out some of those questions in chat. So the first one, how would I make a command which allows users to make a range selection of messages to move to another channel?
Yeah, so this one is kind of a difficult question because it's something that's not super easy to do with the tools available currently. There's kind of one way that we've thought of as like a potentially good option with a couple of different ways you can do it. Um, and the main thing is using message context menu commands. You can have a command that's called, move messages or like range selection, something like that. Don't have exactly a great name for you. You got to figure out what works best for your bot and communicates exactly what it's doing to users. Like move messages would be, useful potentially if it's like specifically for moving stuff into a thread. And then when they run that context menu command the first time, what you want to do is you want to send them a message. For instance, if the use case here is moving these messages to a thread, what you can do is you can, the first time they run that command, create that thread and send a message in there that pings the user saying, hey, I got your first selection. Here's the instructions on how to select the end message. And then info about like kind of giving them like a preview of like, okay, this is the one you selected, waiting for second selection. They make their second selection by running the command again on the end message. It'll update that message in the thread to say, okay, got your second selection. Here's all the messages you selected. Um, and then give them info of like give them a button that says, okay, confirm, this is good to go. Or give them info about how to change their selection if they need to in case they messed up and used or clicked the wrong message. Um, all that kind of stuff is kind of probably the best way you could do it given the currently available tools to you.
Cool. Yeah. Um, Next question. How would I build a settings panel with various toggles and selectors when there's a lot of settings?
Yeah. Um, this one kind of has a couple questions almost into the question. And kind of the first thing that you should probably think about is, do I actually need all these settings? This kind of a little bit goes back to the kitchen sink bot thing of like, if your bot is doing so much that you need like 100 settings, you might want to think about kind of pulling back on that a little bit. And um, there's a lot of times too that like if you have a small bot and it's it does one thing, but you might still have a lot of settings in it. You might want to think about and also do get some data about how many people are actually using these settings. Is there a setting that like you have in there because one person really wanted it, but it turns out like nobody actually uses it. You might want to rethink whether it's worth it to actually have that setting in there. Um, but in order to kind of make it into a good UI, there's a couple different things you can do. One is you can split those settings, group them based on what they do, and then have like if you're using your setting, if you're doing your settings as a um, message with components, you can use the drop down at the top to allow them to select what category of settings to look at. Um, if you're doing it as commands, you can set up command for settings with like sub commands for all the different settings. That kind of allows you can kind of then use the like slash command UI as like essentially like a browser of the settings available. That's not necessarily the best way to do it just because it's a big list. You don't really get that categorization as much, but it is an option. Um, I believe Anthony's also mentioned we've seen people that use like an activity as their settings panel, and so it'll launch an activity. It'll go through like the auth stuff, all that, as a way, and then it loads up a page that's like the big settings panel, and that allows you to do a whole lot more um, that way. We wouldn't necessarily suggest that. It's kind of a heavy thing to do, but if you need to, it's an option that's available. Also with a web dashboard, what somebody mentioned in chat there, another option instead of doing it as an activity. Both of those are kind of good ways if you just can't get around having those complex or a lot of settings. That's a good way to do it. But generally, you should prefer to kind of keep the user in one place because the more they have to hop back and forth between like Discord and a web panel and this thing and that thing, you kind of start to lose users in there, and they start to get overwhelmed with all that stuff. Um, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and then one last thing to think about too: sensible defaults. This is a thing. A great example of this actually. There's sensible defaults, and then prompting users in the moment whether they want to change a setting. This is something that there's kind of a good example with iOS when it comes to this. So for the longest time, if an app wanted to send you push notifications on iOS, it would have to it would prompt you right away when you open to the app saying like, "Hey, this app wants to send you notifications. Do you want to allow it?" That's very overwhelming for users and kind of hits them right away like, "Oh, I just downloaded this app. Now I've got to start configuring stuff." Um, I don't even know what kind of notifications it's going to be sending me. Um, so what iOS does now is apps by default can just send you notifications. Um, and when you get the first notification from an app, iOS as a system will prompt you saying, "Hey, do you want to continue to allow notifications from this app?" And so what that does is it reduces some of the load when the user first downloads and starts using an app. So they don't have to, go through a whole bunch of configuration on first open. It allows them to get in and just do what they're trying to do quicker. And what it also does is it provides the user the context of knowing what kind of notifications they're getting when they have to make the decision about whether they want to continue to receive those or not. So you can kind of do that with your app where you just provide default settings, but then kind of the first time that setting matters, you could prompt the user saying, "Hey, this thing is using this setting. We've used this is the default here. Here's the instructions on how to change it. Potentially offer them the option to like quickly change it. If it's like a toggle setting, you can give them like a button they can press to toggle it, um, and all that."
Cool. Yeah. Cool. Next up, how do I create a friendly UI for all of my 60 plus commands?
This one also kind of going back to the kitchen sink bot thing. Um, Split it up if you can. If you got 60 plus commands, that's maybe a sign. Like it's not necessarily like 100% sign that you're, doing too much, but it's a good moment to think about, am I doing too much? And, sometimes the answer is no, and that's fine. Like, you can decide that like you do need these 60 plus commands. Um, but otherwise, if you do kind of decide that you have, all these commands and stuff, and you're trying to think of like, how do you think about it holistically is the thing. And so what you want to do is you want to kind of take a step back and do what's called user stories or user journeys. All that kind of, I think are kind of the kind of two good search terms for this. Um, and basically what you're doing there is you're kind of putting yourselves in the shoes of someone who's trying to use your application to do a very specific thing. So you're going to think about from start to end. I'm a user. I want to set a reminder with this app. And you're going to think through every single step of like, okay, I have the app. What do I got to do first? I've got to run this command. I've got to do this thing. I've got to click this button. I've got to type in the text. I've got to, confirm it. And you want to think through all those steps. And the things you want to be thinking about when you're doing that is one, as a user who doesn't know anything about this app necessarily, am I going to know that I need to do this next step or how I'm going to do this next step? Is it clear to me? Do I have a clear path forward on how to do this? And if they don't, that's a good opportunity to think about, okay, I need some sort of like user education, like a instructions or a prompt or something like that to tell the user what they need to do. And also thinking about too, does this step really need to exist? For instance, like I mentioned there, of like if you're setting a reminder and your app has a thing where it's like they enter the reminder info and they enter this other info, and you have like a confirm step. One thing you can kind of think about there is instead of having a confirm step, just do it and then offer them a quick undo step at the end, so that instead of having to click confirm every time, because the most common thing is that they're likely entering the correct information, it's a lot less common that the user's going to mess up and like make a typo or set the wrong date or make a to do that they didn't mean to do. um, what you're going to want to do, or what you want to do is you want to kind of make it very simple, very simple experience to do the like what's called the happy path, or like the good thing, the very common thing, but then still provide those outs and those quick undos and that kind of stuff for those situations that are less common, like making a mistake or like a quick edit, that kind of thing. Um, so just kind of think through all of those different user journeys, or user stories, whatever you want to call them, um, for everything in your bot, and just try to cut those down, make them as simple as possible for your users.
Cool. Yeah. Um, we're gonna get some questions from chat now. So we've got one that I think is really good. What's sort of the cleanest way to design a toggleable setting with components v2 that can indicate both the current state and the action, indicate the current state and the action of the button to toggle it? So I think just like, what's the cleanest way to design like a toggleable setting with components v2?
Yeah, probably the best way to do this is to convey the current state in a piece of text um, next to the button rather than necessarily on the button label. You can use the section component for this, and then have the accessory of the section be the button that's used to toggle that setting, and have the text of the section be the name of the setting and potentially the current state. You can also show the current state on the button, but really what you want to do is you want to, because I've seen before, and I've actually made before. I've made a lot of design mistakes in my past. I've made these interfaces where there's like a bunch of toggles, and it's just like essentially a big grid of buttons, and that's very overwhelming for a user. And to like have to read both like a name and a state on the button can be difficult, and make the buttons very like weirdly wide or whatever. So if you have like a toggle and it's just like an on off, you can have that section, and on the left side is the name and description of the setting, and that button is just like the on off, and when they click it, it toggles that state.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Okay, there's a lot of questions about kitchen sink bots. Uh, let me see. There's yeah, I guess maybe we can go back, dive into it. We talked a lot about kitchen sink bots. What do we recommend for those bots? Uh, does it make sense to disable commands by default, or um, what are some ways to sort of like break them down or think about breaking them apart?
Yeah. And I've also noticed a bunch of questions too about like how do I know if my bot is doing too much? Um, and to kind of answer that, how do I know? Um, this is going to be kind of a bad answer, but it's kind of vibe based, you know. Like there's not really a specific metric. Like there's not a specific number of commands or a specific number of functions, you know. You just got to think about, are you truly providing a good experience for everything that your bot's doing? And do they all feel like they are relevant and connected to each other as an experience? And you might have, you know, you might determine that like you have a bot and it does, you know, moderation stuff and it does games and it does like experience, like user like XP tracking. People have like level up bots and that kind of stuff. And so you might have a bot that does those three things, and it might actually do them pretty well. Um, but you might also determine that there's a lot of people that only use the moderation, or only use the level up stuff, or only use um, the third thing that I said. That I can't remember what I said now. And if you kind of come to that determination that there's like specific groups of users that are only using parts of the bot or app, you can break it up into multiple apps, and you can still use um, a you can still use like the bot branding to make it very clear that they're connected. So if you have like a name for it, and there's a good and like you know you got the moderation stuff and you got the level up stuff, you might you know make multiple apps, one called like bot name dash moderation or bot name dash you know level up, that kind of stuff, and you can have those multiple apps and users can install exactly the stuff that they want, and you can also then in those apps, in like their description or you know on your website, etc., you can show that there is multiple things that they can install that are all part of the thing and they all might work together. So it might be too that like there are features that are enabled for the moderation stuff, if they also have the level up portion installed, but those features won't be active if they don't. It kind of creates this modular way of people getting exactly what they want out of your app without uh, getting you know a whole bunch of stuff. And by splitting it into multiple apps too, this also gives you another degree of separation in the command list, um, that makes it less overwhelming for users. Because if I'm trying to look for a moderation command and I'm looking at this app that has you know moderation commands and level up commands and games and this and that, like it's very overwhelming. But if I have you know all if I have all four of those installed on my server because I'm using you know all of them, but if I'm looking for the moderation command, I can click on the moderation bot, and that is just the moderation commands in there. And it becomes very easy for users to understand, you know, and also to like understand which commands are doing what, because there might be similar named commands, and one of them does a moderation action, while one of them does, you know, something on the level up portion of the bot. Um, a whole lot of stuff to kind of think about there.
Somebody also mentioned that making it one dot and enabling modules, like allowing the user to enable like certain modules on there makes sense too. Um,
Yeah,
which,
that's another good way to do it.
yeah. And then again, I don't want to like, say like, oh, kitchen sink bots are bad or like, if it does too many things. I think there are cases where like a kitchen sink bot makes sense, especially if you have like you're building it for a specific server for a streamer, for yourself and your friends. Like it's okay to have a bot do a lot of different things. There's definitely use cases for it. Like none of the things that we've said here are like, hard set in stone, like you need to follow these rules, but like they're all just like, solid guidelines of how to think about building. Yeah, give a sync to a streamer. We just want to help you like build things that are easy like to use and understand. Uh, cool. Okay. I think we're reaching the end. So there's a couple things I want to mention before we wrap. We're doing Screenshot Saturdays here. It came kind of from the game development world, but I'm creating specific threads for game developers and for bot developers. Right now, they're in our dev chat and our game dev chat, but I'm going to actually create a specific channel for these. I think a forum channel this week. But yeah, so every week on Saturday, we'll post a new thread to have people share what they're building, show us screenshots, video, talk about what you're building, and we actually, you know, pulled some of the screenshots for this talk out of what people had posted before, with credit and asking and making sure that that was cool. Um, but yeah, this is just like our way of like we want people to show off what they're building, like and be able to talk about it, and we want to give feedback, and we want to see all the cool things that y'all are building. As soon as we have a specific channel in place for it, I'll announce that and post it there. But yeah, look out for those every weekend, usually Saturdays, unless I forget to post them on Saturday and then it's Sunday. And then upcoming events. We have two events coming up. One where the developer relations team is going to be playing the game Supervive. So Supervive integrated the social SDK into it, and we want to kind of show that off. But we also just want to like play a game and see, have you all just like, trash talk us as we're trying to figure it out and get good at it. Supervive's been pretty fun. We've been practicing a little, so we're not terrible, but that's coming up. And oh, there's one more, just a general like update on like all the things that have happened in the social SDK. So, we announced it in March. We've added a ton of new features and bug fixes and documentation around the social SDK. That's coming soon, and we're gonna talk and do a deep dive into that. Mark, who you all also know, is gonna like tell you basically everything that's going on with it. So many new things. Can't document them all here or talk about them all here yet. And yeah, the feedback survey. Please, if you have time, give us feedback on this talk. Would love to know if you would like to see more things like this. If it was helpful in any way, I think, Maisy has like a huge wealth of knowledge here. Please let us know if this was helpful at all. And even if it's, answering one or two questions in there, we'd love any feedback you've got on it. But yeah, thank you all for coming. We really appreciate you sticking it out. Uh, yeah, and we'll see you at the next event.
Thanks, y'all.